Oh, there go the dogs. Hey, now, good to see you.
Yeah, man, you've grown up you're very dignified now. You're like the elder, but in a good way. Still got that youthful pizzazz. I was thinking about Austin a lot because I lived there from 93 until 95, and I went on to watch one of those Capsize episodes that you were on the Austin cable network.
Charming, no?
It was awesome. It brought me back to, when I was there, I used to laugh when I would have someone from the town, like an old hippie, say, "You wouldn't recognize this place past MLK, 20
right.
years ago." And now I haven't been back in 21 years.
It's just a cycle. When I moved to Austin in 1989, all the old dudes that I hung out with, all the old country western guys and all the old hippie guys, they said the same riff. They said, "Oh, you missed it. You missed it. Those were the glory days." You know what I mean? Like, it's all over, and what they didn't realize was it was all over for them. Like, their glory days had come and gone.
Right.
And they didn't realize that there were new groups of people, like the Cannibal Club was happening, and the surfers were happening, and things were really, really happening in 89, 90 when I got there. And it was a great happening milieu for us. And we made things happen. And then we had our time. And now when I go back there, I just shake my head. It might as well be Santa Monica as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't look, I literally get lost because they've built up so much down in South Austin that they blocked out the skyline. I can't see the sky. And so I literally don't know where I am sometimes. And so I just avoid going anymore, but that's okay. I'm not going to be one of those old fuddy-duddies who goes, "You missed it." You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to be one of those old men. And one of the reasons why I left Austin was so that I wouldn't be like that. That like my time there was productive and it was positive and it was all on the upbeat. And so when it got to the point where it was untenable and it wasn't productive and it wasn't on the upbeat, and all of my friends started to become like a circular shooting gallery of upsetness, you know what I mean? Like, everyone's like mad and talking about how things aren't like they should be, as opposed to being outward looking and trying to figure out something new to do. Totally. And you know what I mean? I felt personally I needed to make a break.
You're no malcontent.
Well, I also had a diagnosis. I also had a psychiatric diagnosis at the time, which helped me kind of clear my head pretty well, and kind of let me know that I'd kind of put myself in a big box there, and that it was time to make a break and make a change. And my rabbi asked me a very important question. He said, "What's your real happy place? Where is it that you exist and you're not mad all the time?" Because it sure wasn't Austin anymore, I'll tell you that. Just walking around made me mad because I would just see things and people that weren't there anymore, and be haunted by ghosts. And so you're just not happy anymore. Right. And it was real easy. The moment I said, "What's my happy place for just waking up and looking around and walking around makes me happy?" It was New Orleans. That was an easy answer. And so kind of just like that, I packed up all my gear and got a U-Haul and came here one day in 2014. I think it was April 24th of 2014, and moved into a friend's basement. And I've been trying to make a go of it here since. And just open a new chapter.
I think it's great. I was thinking about, you'd mentioned your rabbi, and I think that it was this Agudas Achim, which was the temple that I went to. And I'll never forget, because I'm a music guy. I was really into traditional of all kinds. That's what brought me to Austin. And I'll tell you a funny story before I talk about the synagogue, is that I ran into you. I think I first met you. I just had gotten to town. I was just walking down 6th Street it was right before the holidays, and you had a big tuba strapped to you, and it was for some klezmer thing. And I was like, all right, I'm in the right place. This is cool. You know, it's like it satisfied the own the Jewish quotient that I was cool to be down there. You know? But this rabbi at the temple, his name was Mark Sack. It was like before he had left. And I'm not usually up on rabbis, but the irony is that my best friend's wife was part of the temple in Tampa that Rabbi Sack had gone to. But when I was in Austin, I remember this guy visiting. He might have been coming from Israel or something, but it was a rabbi, like an Orthodox trained rabbi, probably in the conservative sphere, telling me that the greatest record he owns is the famous Shrine Auditorium 1955 concert with Sam Cooke and the Soul Stirrers and Brother Joe May. And I'm looking at this guy wearing like a yarmulke, and I was like, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, that a rabbi's telling me like, oh my God, man, they do a nearer my God to thee that'll knock your fucking head off. It was only in Austin.
Right. Yeah, man. It was a milieu. It was a time and a space. And hey, look, it's a different time. It's a different space now. So I don't want anybody to think that we're like jumping on the place.
No, it's the greatest. It was a great, for me, it was a great place. I just wanted as a fly on the wall. I thought I'd seen you guys at Emo's. I saw Bad Livers.
When he says you guys,
the Bad Livers.
The Bad Livers. Right.
Bad Livers.
Bad Livers.
You guys, and I saw your Telluride in '95, I think.
Wow.
I was there, and that was incidental. Game. I wasn't a Bad Livers head, but I was proud that Austin was representing at the time.
Oh, that was a weird gig. Yeah, but thank you. I appreciate that. Bad Livers was a real great little band that I had together with banjo player Danny Barnes, and we still are together. We still play when we can. Danny's just real busy with his own career, which is taken off. He's you know, if you look him up, Danny Barnes on the banjo, kind of reimagined what we think about the 5-string banjo today. But when he was in his neophyte phase, before he had blossomed into who he is today, he worked with me in a group called Bad Livers, and we toured and played all over Texas. And as you may have known, we played 220 to 250 dates a year for about 10 years, and kind of just playing acoustic music in front of audiences that weren't used to acoustic music. And that is to say, playing in front of a lot of punk rock audiences is what we're trying to say, you know, touring with the Butthole Surfers. But then we would play, there was one weekend where we played with the Butthole Surfers on one night, and then we played with the Dillards the next night, you know, so we straddled these two worlds, the kind of the very traditional world and the absolutely not traditional world for a great long while. We walked that kind of precipice for a long, long time.
So did the Dillards, though, in the early 70s.
Yeah, the Dillard, you know, like, for instance, like the guys who were the real outlaws, like guys like Alan Mundy, you know, like banjo players from, you know, like the real outlaws, the Tony Trishkas and the David Grismans and the guys that were really doing the edge stuff back in the old days, John Hartford, guys like that. They knew us, and they really liked us, and they encouraged us a lot when we were out there. We didn't get a lot of encouragement out of the acoustic music world, I'm gonna tell you that right now. Mm-hmm. But those guys, those pioneer guys, they let us know how much they liked us. And to this very day, I get word back from people, like important people. Maybe, you know, we didn't make a lot of money. We didn't get a lot of acclaim, but to quote a kind of a famous alternative bluegrass guy, fellow from the Yonder Mountain String Band, he goes, you know, Rubin, a lot of people didn't buy your record, but the people who did buy your record, they all went out and started a band. Mm. You know, he called us the Velvet Underground of bluegrass music.
Who was that? And Who said that? Who said that?
The fellow named Jeff. Unfortunately, he's Jeff Austin of blessed memory. Unfortunately, he passed on. But Jeff shared that with me, and that was very sweet of him. You know, hey, look, my dad
used to touched a lot of people. That guy. I went to a summer camp. He used to wear our camp shirts, and was very close with one of with our owner. And it was his passing was certainly grieved around here in Chicago.
Devastating. But he was a big fan of our music. You know what I mean? And he made sure that his fans knew about us. You know, and his one of his first bands opened up for us years and years and years ago. So, you know, Bad Livers, I think we made, you know, Danny likes to say we changed the world. You know, a lot of like a lot of the young people walking around slinging banjos and fiddles and playing American music in more of a contemporary way really don't know the debt that they owe Danny Barnes, for instance, and the work that he did in our group, Bad Livers, there in, say, 1991, 1992, and into the 90s. That's okay. It is, you know, if you're doing your job right, if you're doing in culture, if you're doing your job right, you'll be forgotten entirely. That's, you know what I mean? And the people who get remembered are just people who had good publicists. It doesn't mean that they were the best at it. Doesn't mean they were the best.
All those punks. Think about all those punks now. They're all grown up with kids now. The ones that were there in the early 90s in emos, you know, and on God knows what, it was fun, but you guys played there. And I would imagine that you might have made bluegrass and traditional music fans out of them. Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, on a musical level and a creative level, you're in this bad place in Austin. What happens? You know, what precipitates this new chapter? First of all, you get out of your unhappy place.
Right, you move to your happy place.
Yeah. New happy place.
Also, there's a cultural expectation in the city of New Orleans that people will be playing New Orleans music. So it used to be in Texas, there was a cultural expectation that people would be coming to Texas to hear Texas music. That's not the case anymore.
Right.
The fact is that you can't make a living doing that. But here in New Orleans, you still can eke out a little bit of a living going down and playing music like New Orleans music, the Black traditional New Orleans music that people are used to hearing. It's misnomered. It's got a lot of different names, but New Orleans jazz, the traditional jazz. But what it really is it's the local Black music.
Sure.
And if you're well versed in that, and I play the tenor banjo and I play the tuba and the string bass, and I'm well versed in that music, and I study it all the time. There's plenty of folks around here to study from. And if you put your mind to it and you go out there and play it, there's a market for that. So, you know, capitalism, the way it works, if you want to make a living doing something, then you can go and do that. So immediately I was able to come here and go to work immediately and start feeding myself in a way that I used to be able to do in Texas years ago, but hadn't been able to do in almost a decade. So I was a working musician immediately. But what that allowed me to do at that time was pursue this solo act that I had always had in the back of my mind. And as you well know, I'm a bassist and a tuba player and had always been kind of a band leader from the back, you know, leading a band, putting a band together, but, you know, been the tuba player and the bass player in the back, not leading or fronting the band, not singing my songs, you know, not putting out my own music, basically playing traditional music, not stuff that I'd come up with.
Right.
So for 25, 30 years, I'd been doing that, but hadn't like pursued my own, say, musical vision. So when I moved here, it kind of cleared my head a little bit. You know, I got on medication and I got a therapist and psychologist and cleared my head a little bit, focused my energies, and was able to start putting out records of my own material. And so in 2015, 2018, and now in 2021, I have released records of my own material. And so I do so under the moniker, the Jew of Oklahoma, which is kind of my life story. Being a Southern musician of Jewish heritage and what it takes to navigate that particularly thorny road.
Is it thorny?
Yeah, it can be.
It can be, and I'm sure that you have. I remember sitting at the Continental Club watching, like I was getting ready to watch a band, and I remember these three musicians were sitting next to me. I won't mention their names. They're awesome but they were so fucking authentic because they were watching NASCAR racing, and when the fucking cars came by, they were getting up and they were like, and I was thinking, no matter what, I will never really fit in here, but I love this place and I love it. And I'm a blonde Jew that's probably always overcompensated for that, because I'm a strange cat. I like Yiddishkeit. I've always been interested into Jewish stuff, but I'm also into the American thing. and know that we've really contributed to the great American thing that I love, like everything from the Velvet Underground to, you know, to whatever, to Gershwin, and way before that, Chaim Solomon. He could swing.
Well, there's 15 million of us on the whole planet.
Yeah.
And what is it, like 90% of the Nobel Prizes that the United States has won? You know, what is it, 4% of the United States population? In the South, we represent 0.96% of the population. Yet something like 28% of the mercantile, you know, like it's it's a duality that Jews are used to navigating. And as Caucasians, as European Caucasians, we have been we've been afforded the opportunity to pass up to a point. It's a card that has been given, but can be easily pulled. And you won't know when that card gets pulled until you're in their milieu. And, you know, for instance, you know, I am not from the deep South, but I'm from the cultural South. And Oklahoma is very much in the cultural South. There was an active Klan and a white citizens council. I'm 55 years old this year, so I'm a little bit older than other folks. And if you think about 1971 Oklahoma, you need to roll it back about 10 years, culturally speaking.
Just 10.
You know, the golf club was restricted. You know, Catholics and Jews were not allowed to join. The public pool was restricted. Indians, Hispanics, Blacks, Catholics, Jews not allowed to swim. I mean, you know, when I was a kid growing up, this is the reality that we grew up in. The amount of indignities that my parents were fed and that I had to witness as a child were traumatic. And we had bricks thrown through our windows on Hitler's birthday. I knew Hitler's birthday when I was a kid, April 20th, because we would stay at a hotel. Your dad would stay at the house with a shotgun, and we'd stay at the hotel.
Wow.
And
Jesus.
And I mean, and we had a cross burned in our yard when I was a kid.
You're kidding.
And I mean, this is 1976. You know what I mean? This is in my lifetime.
The year of the bicentennial.
Hey, America.
Right.
You know, so American values.
Did your folks come
knitted into the fabric of our country?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you're bringing this stuff up because, you know, I don't like getting political. The only thing I want to get political about is the racialization of America in the last few years to something that means victimization, as opposed to considering the full story of how far we've come from things. And from a Jewish perspective, I remember taking a class in school, and the teacher told us about I don't know if he was a theologian or just a philosopher named Salo Baron, who talked about something called the lachrymose conception of history for Jews. And that means only focusing on like the misery and all of the bad stuff. And I feel as though that's being done with people of color.
With people of color.
Yes. However, what is ignored are the nuances of other so-called Caucasian people, like those Jews that might have been in Alabama in the 1970s or Oklahoma in the 70s, and who within 100 years from that emigrated from places that they were, you know, second, third class citizens, you know, and had to basically get the permission from whatever governing body, be it a queen, be it, you know, a prince or something like that, or a czar. So we're familiar with that stuff. And as somebody who appreciates, you know, just history, it's, you know, you have to own the whole thing, but you also have to own the triumphant stuff, because you remained a conspicuous Jew in spite of all that shit.
Well, but there's also the thing about, even if you wanted to stick to join in, you weren't allowed.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Because unit cohesion is how you keep order. And one of the ways that you keep unit cohesion is by pointing out the other and ganging up on the other. Right. Is one way of doing it. Scapegoating, great way to keep unit cohesion. So even if you wanted to participate, you were not allowed. However, that was not going to be a problem with my dad. My dad was a shtacha yid, man. He was absolutely down to Jew. You know, whenever there was a Christmas display in the school, he wasn't having it. When there were Christian prayers over the school speakers, he wasn't having it. I mean, he was a thorn in the side of the Christian identity that was woven into the fabric of both politics and education in our small town. And that kind of singled us out in many respects.
Where was he from?
He liked to say we were the town Jews. He was from a ranch in Arizona.
Wow.
He grew up a rancher.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so we have an interesting family story. We came in through Galveston Island, as opposed to coming in through Ellis Island. Came in through Galveston, went to Chicago, but then my grandfather became an engineer, joined the Corps of Engineers, fought through the Pacific, came home, became a silver miner, cowboy and a silver miner. And
so you probably have a lot of relatives buried around these parts in Chicago.
Yeah, there's a big, deep Chicago Yiddishkeit. Big time. Got two branches of Chicago family up there.
What were the names?
Rubin, R-U-B-I-N. It's all Rubens. And
so cool.
but we're diasporic. Arizona and is where the mining end of my family is. And then I'm part of the Oklahoma tribe. We've got my uncle and my father both landed in Oklahoma, and so not your standard Jewish narrative.
No, but that's very tough. It's tough that your dad did that, and it's very brave, because you have to have a real sense of self and also be able to kind of be charming to other people at the same time and not just be the thorn. I'm sure he was proud of living, in that area or being from the South.
Well, yeah, we were like, he insisted I was a country boy. He was not going to have me be a city boy. When I was a kid, we knew a Jewish melker, a genuine Tevye who lived on a farm not far out of town, Mr. Katz. And he would, on Sundays, because everything was shut down on Sundays in a small town, my dad would send me out to Morris Katz's farm, and he would have me go out and milk the cows and clean the stall and drive the tractor and do all this farmhand stuff, because he was, I'm not raising a city boy. Wow. So I rode horses and I hunted and I lived that, I lived as close to a country existence as they would let, a Nebuchadnezzar little fat Jewish kid do in Oklahoma at the time. But looking back on it, that was because we insisted that we were people of this land, that we were not outsiders, that we were neighbors, and that we had every right as anyone else to be taken, that we were neighbors, that we were people of this land, and that we were not some kind of interlopers or outsiders that fell into some anti-Semitic trope, that might be going around. And so that was instilled into me at a very early age, and I think it comes through my music. And that's one of the things that's super important about what I'm doing with my music right now, is a absolute reconciliation between this idea, because there have been, you know, my Jewishness as a Southern musician was never brought into question until it was.
How
If
so?
you know what I mean.
That's interesting. I want to know how.
Well, there's a story. So Bad Livers were doing real well. We got on Sugar Hill Records and we were touring around, and we found ourselves in Nashville, and we were label mates with Del McCoury Band. Now, I told you that John Hartford was a big supporter of ours at the time, and he really got to know Danny Barnes. And Danny Barnes and him were starting to do some collaborations. And it kind of looked like Bad Livers were going to crater and that Danny was going to run off with John. And that left me in a kind of situation where I'm going to have to figure something out for myself. So I was sitting on the tour bus with Del and all the boys in his band. And I was kind of poking around. I was going to say, so this is what I said. I said, hey, Del, you know, I'm thinking about maybe moving up here to Nashville and picking up some work as a trad bluegrass bass player, you know, because this is something I've done pretty much my whole life, my whole career. You know, I started playing traditionally and then went on to Bad Livers. And everyone acknowledges I'm pretty damn good at it, right? So I was thinking, maybe I could come up here to Nashville and maybe with some help, was what I was kind of poking around at, pick up some work as a bluegrass bass player, you know, and all his band was there and they're all hanging out. And as soon as I said that, you could have heard a pin drop on that bus.
Really? And this is you're addressing the one of the elders of American bluegrass music. Oh, that's redundant, but just bluegrass music. And this
American music.
Yes. American.
And so I look around this tour bus and I go, hold on now. Did I say something wrong? And Del turns to me and he goes, well, you know, Mark, we already have us a Jewish bass player up in Nashville.
Oh, Jesus. Who, Mark Schatz?
Yep.
Was that who? Is that right? That's a good guess. Wow. No, wow.
And then I turn to him and I say, shocked. I'm literally shocked. And I turn to him and I go, Del, is it really like that? And I'll never forget, he puts his hand on my shoulder and says, well, we hire out of the church parking lot, and I don't reckon we'll see you there.
Oy vey. That's a story that he's still alive. He's not alive anymore, is he?
Yeah, sure he is.
He is. Well, at least I know why Steve Earle didn't get along with him now.
That was the brick going through my window. That's what it felt like. That was the cross burning on my yard. That was the you don't belong here. He literally said, I think you should just go back to Texas and do what you're doing down there. That is exactly what he said. You don't belong. Jews don't belong here. And I got it on the greatest authority you could possibly get it from. And so, you know, this is essentially, as my psychiatrist pointed out years later, this is called a re-traumatization. This is PTSD. And what it did was it it said, that's it for American music. That's it for you sons of guns. You know, I have spent my life as a Southern American. Now, how come it is any Yankee boy who's never been on a farm doesn't know this difference between cow shit and horse shit? How come any Yankee coming out of Berkeley with a degree in bluegrass performance can come down to Nashville and be accepted in the Nashville bluegrass community? That's perfectly fine, just as long as they're not Jewish. Just as long as they can pass for Christian.
Or unless if you're a Bob Dylan who could go record down there with the big labels back in the day, because there's always been Jews in, I mean, Leonard Cohen, like all this stuff, right, but they're not indigenous.
Right. Yeah, and I have a friend, I've got friends, a band called Nefesh Mountain, and they're awesome.
Nefesh Mountain?
And they're a Jewish bluegrass band. They're awesome. But the thing that's different about them is they're a Jewish bluegrass band.
Right.
They are outsiders. They're not from the South. They're Northerners who got into bluegrass music. They weren't raised up with it in their ears. They aren't from the South. It wasn't the music of their nurture. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It wasn't what they were nurtured on. And I was basically told that the music of my nurture was not for me. So what did I end up doing? I had to re-examine the music of my nature. And almost simultaneously to that time that I was told that I was not welcome in bluegrass music, not welcome in American music, was the time that Henry Sapoznik got a hold of me at KlezKamp up in the Catskills and said, why don't you come up and join this community? Why don't you come up and enjoy? I'd already been trickling around in the Klezmer community, just kind of like poking around in it. But he was like, why don't you come up here and study for real? Why don't you come up and join this community? They don't have any bass players or tuba players. Why don't you come up and do this? And what that led on to was a career as a tuba player and a bass player, playing with some of the greatest lights in the Klezmer community, and then also ended up being an educator and pedagogue in that community. And that's taken me around the world. I've, toured all over Europe and Eastern Europe, playing with some of the greatest Jewish and Romani musicians you care to name of a generation. And I've been super lucky and blessed to have been able to do that. So in some respect, I should thank Dale in some respect for telling me that.
I think it's good that he did, because it connected you. At the same time, if you have a fragile soul at times, if you're at a point where you want to seek the approbation from somebody like Adele McCory. Now, me personally, I wish that you would have asked like Sam Bush or somebody on a lower rung, because those guys are old hippies and they're all about the inclusion, and John Hartford and
but that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to play that good old bluegrass, that Ralph Stanley, that good old stuff, that stuff that I was raised with. I didn't want to play that hippie groove jam stuff. Yeah. I was already playing that hippie groove jam stuff with Bad Livers.
Right.
I wanted to put on the suit and go out there and sing those hymns that I was taught in elementary school. I could sing all those Christian hymns. I was taught that stuff in elementary school. It was part of my being. When we would drive to Sunday school from Stillwater, Oklahoma to Oklahoma City so I could go to Jewish Sunday school, what was on the radio for that hour and a half drive but Christian gospel, Church of Christ and Baptist gospel? That was in my ear. That was part of my upbringing. So I was primed. I was ready to go. And that particular door closing did lead to this other one opening. But what's happening now in my life, since I've moved to New Orleans and been able to kind of address these things, is this reconcilement of these particular worlds, this music of my nurture and this background of my nature, and trying to reconcile those together, which has come together in my, in my latest record, The Triumph of Assimilation, which I think I've really finally coalesced those two things together, where I take, for instance, these great Yiddish poems that I found in my work in the Yiddish community, these beautiful Yiddish poems that have just such power and meaning, especially for today, and then transadapt those into the American vernacular that I was raised with.
Right.
In other words, to take those tools of traditional American music that I was removed from, and then take all of these great Jewish traditions that I learned as I was studying them, in the quote unquote ghetto that I was pushed into, you know what I mean? Like, I find myself in this ghetto over here, make the best of it, and then take the best from this, and then try and reconcile those together. And I feel my latest record, Triumph of Assimilation, is precisely that. It's taking, the poetry of Mordecai Gebertig and kind of taking my Harlan Howard and my Ralph Stanley and my Doc Boggs and transadapting those and trying to bring that together, so that to make finally pull those parts together that tell my story in the most natural way possible. Because people look at me like it's an admixture, like, oh, look, there's this,
right?
He's mixing these things together, but it feels more like, to me, it's finally a natural expression.
I'm thrilled
finally.
for you. Tell
finally.
me, is it Eric or Enid, Oklahoma, that Roger Miller's from?
I think it's Enid.
Enid. That guy.
Enid.
That guy would be my my Del McCory if he was. You know what I mean? He's just, to me, the best of everything.
One of the greats.
I'll tell you though, on the opposite end, I was just thinking that I was very excited to know that Mike Marshall, who I always thought was Jewish and is not, is into klezmer music.
Big time. He's a member of the Gare Mandolin Orchestra.
That's so cool.
They're a wonderful, wonderful project, and a friend of mine up in Toronto puts that together. And trust me, I wish I was in that group. I've been for years now. I've been trying to get myself. I want to be the Mando bass player in that group. I've been trying really hard to get into that, but to no avail.
when Carrie told me, like, he said, you want to interview this guy from Texas? I swear to God, Mark, I've thought about you for a few decades since I moved back to Chicago, because I just thought you were a brave dude and cool and conspicuously Jewish, down to your unfrom Hebrew tats. I just thought it was badass, man. I thought it was so cool. I thought when you played bass, there was kind of a shimmying that you'd be doing while you were playing that I thought was really fucking awesome. And I knew that. I remember we had some words, not bad words, but I remember I saw you in a short period of time when I first moved there. I kept running into you, and one was at the Cactus, and we were talking about somebody, and in your Oklahoma drawl, you said the word chazer. And I was like, this guy is just like, I'm on a different. This is just so different, and it's so cool. And when you were at emo, it's like before the band, you had like some wine. It's almost like you had like a little Shabbos around you on stage on a Friday night, and you gave me a glass of wine. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I get a lot of crap up in New York because in Oklahoma we put R at the end of a lot of words, so my Meshuggah comes out Meshuggah.
That's same with New York, same with Groucho Marx. They would always say like Linder.
Meshuggah. That old boy, he's Meshuggah. It gets me in a lot of trouble.
What is KlezKamp? Explain that to me, because I'm fascinated.
It used to be, there used to be this thing called KlezKamp. Now there's this thing called KlezCanada. There are these annual events where they get all of the people who are involved in the Yiddish Renaissance, all the things that have to do with Yiddish cultural arts, both music, dance, visual art, but language, most importantly, bring them all together, put them in a hothouse environment, and kind of try and replicate the oral tradition, so that that they're trying to kickstart culture. So the secular Yiddish culture that existed before both the Holocaust, assimilation into American milieu, and the replication of Hebrew after the establishment of the State of Israel. These three forces have kind of conspired to do away with Yiddish culture. So there's a new generation, 2 generations now, that have decided that they want to invest themselves into the language and culture of their forefathers and mothers and other people, and progress it forward. And so I got in on the ground floor in about 1993 or so, and now it's moving. It's. There were only about 2.
You were doing that. You were part.
Yeah,
of
for about. Yeah, from about 1993 until it wrapped up about 8 or 9 years ago. And then now Klez Canada, they've celebrated, I think, their 20-year anniversary. I've taught at Yiddish Summer Weimar in Weimar, Germany,
Wow.
KlezFest UK in London. I've taught at KlezMore Festival in Vienna, at the Festival of Jewish Culture in Krakow 6 times, the Warsaw Festival in Warsaw, Poland. There are other festivals that I haven't taught in St. Petersburg, Russia. So it's much like Jews. It's super diasporic. Some of my students are Latvian and Russian, and they're from all over, from Germany, all over kind of places. So they all kind of meet at these events, and then go back out in the world, and then go teach other people. And but it's all based around the Yiddish language.
So do you get up in front of the crowd and say, "Mit ein Tuches kann man nicht tanzen auf zwei Chassidus"?
No, unfortunately, what's interesting about me is that I'm part of the non-Yiddish speaking generation. Like
I'll learn with you. That's all I know.
And but this is my only Yiddish. Is was is the Name of a Yid can nichts Yiddish? No.
Was lernst du?
Yeah. Das lernst du, ja. Das lernst du, ja. But the Name of a Yid as a goy.
Yeah. Well, it's wild. I picked up mandolin for the first time. I've been playing guitar for I've been playing guitar since I'm 15, so a long fucking time. When I picked up the mandolin, and I mean, I'm a flat picker. I do all that stuff, and I was always afraid of mandolin until I realized, like, wow, all this tuning is allowing me to do like like playing all that stuff. But it's cool. I'm also,
Write this down.
What?
Prince Nazaroff.
Prince Nazaroff. Well, I'm recording, so
Prince Nazaroff, the greatest Jewish mandolin player of all time.
Well, you've played with Andy Statman, and
I'll still stand on Andy Statman's front door.
Okay, cool. But wait. But what's so interesting to me is I think Yiddish is problematic to some because it's part of, when my grandparents came, when they were born here, but when their parents came, I don't think they wanted if they weren't religious, they just spoke the Yiddish, they were becoming Americanized, because I mean, when the temple was destroyed and we found ourselves in, Italy and then France and then wherever else, that we went to, and, heading towards the Pale, it's understandable that Yiddish emerged, but from that came these great poets and I like Yiddish culture, not necessarily the fiddler on the roof kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like in terms of just but I love klezmer music as well. I was thrilled to find out that I'm related to Yale Strong, who's a cool cat.
Right.
Right. But it's fascinating though that when I saw that, when I told Carrie, when I read the press release, I was thinking, it made me happy to know that whatever, the word pintala yid is like, the fire has gotten so big in you that now you're an emissary, whether you like it or not. I don't care if you're living in Ottoman Park on the grass. You got the job to do, man. I'm going to be one of your. I'll be one of Rubin's soldiers.
Look, I only have this one thing. I only have this one thing that I think is important. Look, there's so many Jewish musicians who are in the traditional arts, in American traditional arts. There's some of them are some of the greatest Cajun fiddlers you're ever going to meet. Some of them are the greatest Irish Ilian pipers you're ever going to meet. Do you know what I mean? So they're at the top of the field of all of these great American traditional musics. Scratch a couple of them and you're going to find Jews. And I think that's because, you know, Barry Poss, who used to run Sugar Hill Records, was a champion clawhammer banjo player. But he grew up in a Yiddish-speaking Jewish home. And I always asked him, how come you didn't learn any of that? You know what I mean? How come you didn't pick up any of that stuff, but you became this champion musician in another person's tradition? And he says, well, you know, when we were kids, we wanted to get away. We wanted to break away from our families, but we were Jews. So we had to have some kind of tradition. You know, we had, you know, in other words, we had to have something. And I understand that. And I understand this attachment that people have when they see some culture, some living culture, and they really want to be involved in it. But for Jews, my key here is that I want to remind them they have a living culture, that it's fine to go and be a Cajun fiddler, and it's fine to go be an Irish Ilian piper. But would it kill you to know some Yiddish melody on these instruments that you've mastered so well? Would it, as I explained to a friend of mine, if you're spending all of this time playing American bluegrass or some other American folk tradition, you're essentially building a house that you will never be allowed to live in at the end of the day. And that you yourself have your own rich American tradition, because klezmer music, Yiddish dance music, is an American tradition. It's not a tradition that we look overseas to. It's a tradition that was fostered and grew here and has its own sound and its own traditions that were shaped by American people. So it's a valid American tradition, and it's a Jewish American tradition. And so why aren't you spending like any time at all looking at that? Because the door might get closed to you. It was to me.
There's some great people. I mean, have you ever played with Mark Rubin?
You know, I was, that's a long story, but you know, I had a klezmer band at a folk festival, and they asked Mark Rubin to sit in with us, and he declined.
Oh, well, sorry, brought him up.
Yeah, well, but I'm just saying that, like, that's not his, that might just be some other.
Yeah,
that's
it wasn't, I'm sure it wasn't personal.
No, it wasn't personal. It was just he didn't want to play another gig.
Yeah.
The deal was. But the thing is that every now and again I come across some YouTube channel of some cat who looks really, really Semitic, and he's got all these great tunes he's got all these wonderful old time fiddle tunes, and then he'll sneak, you know, one little klezmer tune in there, and I'm going, yeah, there we go. You know what I mean? Like, what would it kill you to know a few little banjo numbers that you've worked out of Jewish melodies that you grew up with, or that you've learned? You spent all of this time learning somebody else's music. What's the deal with that? What's the deal with that? You spent all of this time learning, you know, spending so much time painting somebody else's house, and at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to get to live in that house. Well, so you know, maybe fair, work on your own.
Maybe that world of Jewish stuff, I'll just say it, is for some represents a certain rigidity in their past, maybe their grandparents' past, or they're Holocaust survivors' kids. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of head trips being played on us historically.
Well, also there's this boo-hoo-hoo Holocaust narrative that is fed upon us that says that everything that happened before the Holocaust was bad for us. They don't talk about the joy that we had. They don't talk about the poetry that we had. They don't talk about the joy of life. They don't talk about the joy of Jewish life that occurred before Hashoah. And that's because they wish to have a new narrative that's focused on this place out in the Middle East that we're all supposed to be focused on.
Or just the religion of suffering. And that's what I was bringing in terms of, that's what I brought in terms of, you know, the racialization and how it means something not necessarily good, you know?
Yeah, but what does Reb Nachman say? Reb Nachman says, be happy, we're
right.
Jews. Be happy, right? What do the Chassids say? Mach freilich, be happy. Like, you know, it sounds sad, it's in modals, but it's supposed to be upbeat. Like,
well, yeah,
you know,
I remember, speaking of Nashville, I remember the first time I saw and heard Buddy Miller, I was blown away. And his brother was there taking pictures. And I was like, you guys are from New Jersey? This guy's, your brother's, you guys are Jewish? So yeah. And I remember going up to Buddy Miller, and it was this like High Tone Records thing. Dave Alvin was there, who's one of the loveliest guys. And Dave Alvin's father was part of the liberation of Dachau. His motion, I mean, that is.
He's told me that.
He's the fucking cool. I love Dave Alvin. Dave, if you're watching this, I got Dave Alvin's, I got Cass Alvin. That's his father's military records, and I sent him over to Dave. You know, I was like, he was
Dave's the best.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, so I went up to Buddy Miller and I said, man, I'd love to see like a Jewish honky tonk guy, and his look to me was not pleased, or if it was just like, and I found out,
look,
you know,
man, back in Texas, for every Hanukkah, we went to our favorite honky tonk. I put together a 5-piece all Jewish country band, and we had the honky tonk Hanukkah.
Who was in that band?
So we had, it was my working band. It was just, you know, some guys you don't know, but it was guys who some of the guys used to play with Dale Watson and Cornell Hurd and and Don Walzer. Some of these guys were some of the most, we're all first call country western side.
I probably know. I remember what were some of the names, because I used to.
Herb Belofsky was on drums, and you probably don't know him, but a guy named Andrew Hallbright on the steel guitar, Sean Orr on fiddle, and it was all Jewish guys.
Wow.
And we had the rabbi come out. We had latkes, had trays of latkes, and we put out on the pool table, and so. Yeah, so we had a Jewish honky tonk band on the second night of Hanukkah every year when I was still there, the honky tonk Hanukkah. So it was possible. It was entirely possible.
Well, did you ever
it's possible to be Jewish identified and still operate, you know, and within those borders. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I never got any shit for being Jewish in Texas, ever. Never got any shit for being Jewish in Texas. It was only until I went up to Tennessee. There's that.
Well, you know, also Austin meant some, you know, is a place where, you know, Ray Benson came, you know, and he's vocally, and, you know, though his family comes from Chicago, Kinky Friedman was always nice to, I remember, and I have friends who all went to his parents' camp. Did you go to that camp ever?
No.
But so it's funny. I remember Kinky I was interviewing him. His manager Cleve is a funny guy too.
Funny guy.
So
yep.
So Kinky says, like, he's just going through his kinkiness, you know, and like being, you know, well, son, and blah blah blah. And I said, Kinky, I know, you know, two of my good friends were in your cabin. It was like when you were their counselor, and he immediately he's like, oh, which ones? What are their names? But I love that he when he ran for mayor of Kerrville or something, one of his promises was to keep him out of war with Fredericksburg.
Right. That's right. No, man, it's Texas. Texas was always far more advanced and friendly. It wasn't until I got out of Texas did it seem to be an issue. But look, man, the thing is that, you know, on my records, I try, like on every one of my records, I try and put like a Jewish gospel tune, like a hip tune. You know what I mean? Like not like the tra la la kind of modern Jewish praise gospel. But like something cool that you'd like to sing. You know, I wrote a little song about Shabbos on the new record, you know, that's like a little blues number, like a nice little hot little ragtime blues number.
What's it
And
called?
Good Shabbos.
I got a good title for you. I got the best title for you. Shabbos till the cows come home.
Oh, that's a good one. I like that.
I always remember when I lived in Austin, I used to go to the Chabad there, and I would talk to Mendy Levertov, who was the son. Levertov. Yeah, and he's probably got kids now. I only have one kid, and I started late, but he would always say, "Tell me, Moshe, tell me one of those Shabbos stories," because I would say, "Okay, this story is Shabbos in St. Louis," and I would pick different towns. And then one day, I just was completely. I think I drank too much, and I was just out of it. And I said, "Just tell me Shabbos story." All right, Shabbos till the cows come home. So there it is.
Rabbi Levertov in Austin is a famous Chabad Rebbe, by the way. So in case to keep people up to speed.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, man. Yes, but on the records, I'm trying to. I play a Yiddish instrumental on the banjo to show that the banjo is capable of doing that. I put a little Yiddish gospel on the records to show that it's capable. You know what I mean? Just a little, trying to add to the lexicon of Yiddishkeit within the context of American traditional music, and that's where that's one of the things I'm trying to get across. I'm also trying to excoriate anti-Semitism, which is where a lot of the other songs are coming from.
You've got to get on some kind of temple circuit where you play. I'll help. I'll do whatever I have to do, man, to like get you. There are speakers bureaus. Have you written a book?
No, I haven't written a book yet, but I've got the sketches of it.
All right, we'll talk about that. I want to help get you
excellent,
seriously, because this is important stuff, and in a sense it's rebellion in a good way, because you're going against the status quo, and the people who have been so quiet throughout this whole period with the Trump stuff and everything like that have been Jews. It's a very strange. We walk a tightrope historically in this country. We do, but it's also our home. I mean, it's the same way anybody. I remember a Native American woman said, 5 of my uncles were all in World War II in Korea. My brothers were in Vietnam. They were all in the Marines. Like, they're patriotic too,
Yeah, look, here's the deal. I was packing to leave, and then I remembered that I've got 5 generations of military service in this country. You know what I mean? That's how many generations Rubens have been in this country. The thing is that rather than pack to leave, I just went and bought more ammo.
Dude, man, you've enlisted somebody to fight the fight, because I thought I was all alone. But
yeah, I have a deal. Every other Friday before Shabbos, I take a couple kids down to the gun range and teach gun safety.
Are your folks still alive?
My mother's still with us. She lives out there in Arizona still, and I've got a sister and a brother still out there, and they're all we're still the Jewish identified part of the family.
Good.
Most Rubens are not, but we held on.
And you held on in a harder place to hold on to it.
Without a doubt. I mean, I think why the rest of the family kind of, at least on my end, the greater family is very deeply Jewish identified, but like on our end, it kind of winnowed away simply because, out on the ranch and out on the farm, it's hard to keep kosher, hard to hang on. Yeah. You end up marrying Goyim and end up, taking on their lifestyle. But my father held on tight, and he experienced something. He lived in Germany as an American securities. He worked for the U.S. government in the military as a securities agent, and evidently in Berlin something happened to him when he was there, and it created deep religious moment for him, and it solidified his Jewish identity while he was in Germany.
It's probably 10 years after the Holocaust. It probably was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was precisely 10 years after the Holocaust. So when he came home renewed and Balstuva and lived, no greater zealot than a convert, and ended up being the only non-ordained Hillel director at the time. By the way, I think my computer may die here in a second.
Okay, well, listen, I'll stay in touch. This made my week, honestly. I'm so glad to talk to you and know what you're doing.
But I guess what I want to talk about, if we have just a short period of time,
as much time as you want, brother.
Well, I mean, my computer's about to die, so it just dawned on me. But I wish I could get my other computer up and we can continue talking.
Why don't you grab the banjo and just play us out, just on something.
Play
us out. Sing us back home.
Let's see. Let's see here. Can you hear that? Well, Southern Jews, good news, baby. Well, Southern Jews is a damn good news. Southern Jews, good news, baby. Well, it's just them Yankees I'm worried about. You got them Jews down in Oklahoma. As to average landsmen, you got them down in Tennessee, down in Mississippi, down in sunny old Alabama. Well, heck yes, I say, can Max a shyness lead? Is this to you great news? Because New York City seems mighty exotic to us Southern Jews. Well, we're mostly in the agribusiness, just like Tevye milking cows. You can pick out all our farms from the absence of any sound. Well, our Yankee friends perform manners, well, we often must excuse. No pigs in our poke, no, it ain't no joke. We're the down-home Southern Jews. Well, we take your bacon off of cheeseburgers and we greet you with a howdy, y'all. We drive to shul on Shabbos in our best dress coverall. Well, famous for our barbecue. It's kosher beef, so you can't refuse. Got a trucker, a cap for a keeper. It's a scramble of the Southern Jews. Well, now, Southern Jews are good news, baby. Well, Southern Jews is a damn good news. Well, Southern Jews are good news, baby. Well, it's just them Yankees I'm worried about. Well, some folks down here say we pass for white. Well, at least they ain't black. Well, it might be true for some down here, but you always got to watch your back. Well, our skin tone gives us much relief, and some days we get to choose. You got to navigate your privilege when you live as a Southern Jew. Let me tell you about Judah Benjamin, the Confederate Secretary of State. Well, on that particular side, we lined up on side of hate. But in the war of northern aggression, y'all might think you got a higher score. But if you look down south today, you got to say y'all sure enough lost that war. Did we kill your Lord? Heck, yes, we did. Bring him back and we'll kill him again. And the good old boys all belly laugh because we're all the best of friends. Well, that sort of talk might have shocked you. In fact, it might confuse. But it's source like this all the live long day when you live as a Southern Jew. Well, now, Southern Jews are good news, baby. Well, Southern Jews is a damn good news. Well, Southern Jews are good news, baby. Well, it's just them Yankees I'm worried about.
Yashikar. What is there a Yiddish word?
Gracias, senor.
Is there a Yiddish word for etchele or etwa?
Etwa. I'll take etwa, my friend.
Etwa.
Atazoy.
That was great.
Atazoy. That's the way. Atazoy.
I'm glad you mentioned Judah Benjamin. That's the elephant in the closet.
Look, man, you got to tell the story of Southern Jewry, by the way, my friend.
And
by the way, I just took a day job at a place called the Museum of the Southern Jewish Experience. And if you find yourself in New Orleans, I'd like you to be my guest. Come on down and see me. I'm running the ticket counter there Wednesday through Friday. Love to see you. If you just happen to be down here in New Orleans, it's a lovely place. There's a little thing about Judah Benjamin that we can talk about.
I'll have you on again, man. Let's anytime you want to talk, but let's stay in touch. Man. Let's talk off campus.
You bet, man. Hey, look me up on the old KlezKamp. Just plug in Jew of Oklahoma on the KlezKamp. I lost a lot of money making that record, so I sure appreciate it if you pick yourself up a copy. And if you like it, pick up a copy for your friend. And if you don't like it, pick up a copy for someone you don't like.
Danny Barnes plays on that, right?
Danny Barnes plays on that record. He played on a version of a tune that I cut for, it's a version of Mein Ruhe Platz, My Resting Place, which is an old Yiddish labor ballad. And he did an outstanding job playing banjo on that tune. I'm really, really proud of that. Very, very proud of that. He also, by the way, Danny Barnes, made a video for me for my single, It's Burning. And he actually did an animated video for it. It's really something else. I should give you the link for it. It's really, really, really cool.
Well, listen, thank you for doing all this, man. Seriously, thank you.
What a genuine pleasure.
All of this.
Well, it's really great to have somebody in my corner. It's really great to Max Schiddich and have somebody in my corner. And I love to talk to you anytime. We could rattle on about many different.
But I want to help you honestly, because this is blowing my mind. It's great stuff.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And
sei gesund, my brother.
Be gesund, and if we don't see you in the future, we'll see you in the pasture.
Okay, buddy. Take care, bud.